السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله تعالى من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم بارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم إنك حميد مجيد. So we're going to continue inshallah our hadith class with the Mutawatir hadith. It would be inappropriate to just go without any comment on the current events. We need, it would be betrayal if we don't mention that. Okay? So first of all, we have all seen the events, and last time I was telling you, whatever happens will happen by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His knowledge. And nothing will happen without His permission and without His knowledge. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a complete wisdom, whether you can see it now or not. We mentioned that last time. Did you feel pain? Was your heart squeezed? Did your heart squeeze? Did you feel this squeeze in your heart? Did you maybe lose appetite or lose sleep? This is actually a good sign. For yourself, now you care. You're part of this ummah. You're part of Muslim ummah. You're sleeping safe in your house. You have enough food. You have electricity. You have water. You have all the things that you want. You have a car. You have nobody's is troubling you, but you're still feeling this pain of your brothers. And this is what the Prophet ﷺ said when he mentioned مثل المؤمنين في توادهم وتراحمهم وتعاطفهم كمثل الجسد إذا اشتكى منه عضو تداعى له سائر الجسد بالسهر والحمى. That the Muslims, in their sympathy and empathy and love and this passion between them, is like one body. If a limb or a part of this body gets hurt, the rest of the body would feel the pain and would feel this, this fever and lose of sleep. And if you felt this, say Alhamdulillah. Say Alhamdulillah that this happened, that you have this feeling. This is a good sign. This is number one. Number two, mark your friends. You've seen that our nation, no matter where the borders are, we're still like they said, على قلب رجل واحد. You have the heart of a same person, of a single person. Keep this. Okay? Know your friends and know your enemies. Because as I told you last time, this is a pivotal event. What is coming will not be like what happened before, whether it's good or bad. Allah A'lam what's going to happen. Signs show that we're going in a good direction. Allahu A'lam. Maybe I'm optimistic, but this is the signs show that we're heading in the right direction. Third thing, do whatever you can to support your brothers. Make dua. Make donations. If pass this knowledge to your families, to your friends. Do not make this case stop at yourself. It's not something, a worry or a ham that you have, but something that you're being troubled, but you're not passing this to your kids. No, pass it to your kids. Pass it to your relatives. Keep this thing alive. Okay? Another thing, there's been a lot of fallacies being spreaded. If you can tackle this, if you can defend your brothers, if you can say, no, this is false information, do that. Okay? Now it's your turn. Like you're asking, what can I do? There's a lot you can do. If there are some, events, attend those events. Do not say, okay, I'm just sitting home. I wouldn't, whatever I do wouldn't affect. No. What you do, your voice, your writing, your texting, anything you do would affect. It has an effect. So don't give up on your brothers. Do whatever you can, even if it's little. Do not say it's little, I'm not going to do it. There will no be result or no effect. No, there is. Okay, so we're going back to the hadith. Hadith number 9. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الإيمان يمان. رواه البخاري ومسلم. Bukhari and Muslim reported that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, belief is among the Yemenites, or belief is Yemenite, from Yemen. You know Yemen, right? Okay. And this hadith was reported on the authority of 11 reported this hadith. 10 of them are companions, and the 11th is one of the tabi'een, or actually it's disputed whether he was a sahabi or just a follower. Anyways, 11 reported this hadith. And from those companions, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, Amr ibn Abasa radiallahu anhu, Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, Uqba ibn Amir radiallahu anhu, and the rest. So we mentioned that one of those who reported the hadith is Uthman ibn Affan radiallahu anhu, Amir al-Mu'mineen, Uthman ibn Affan al-Umawi al-Qurashi, the third Khalifa, one of the 10 promised Jannah, and one of the men who supported Islam even in the very early stages. He was born in Mecca, and he embraced Islam shortly after the Prophet ﷺ was sent. After the Prophet ﷺ became a messenger, he embraced Islam shortly after. And before Islam, he was also a rich and honorable man. And he married 2 of the Prophet's daughters. He married the first one, she died, then he married the second one. And from his great deeds in Islam is funding the army in the Battle of Tabuk. From his own money, he funded the complete army. And during his time as a Khalifa, a lot of land and cities were conquered. And he was killed in his house after some aggressors sieged his house and broke in and entered to kill him. Radiallahu anhu, at that time, he was killed while he was reading Qur'an, and this was the year 35. He reported 146 hadiths on his authority. 146 hadiths are reported. Subhanallah, this is a trend. We mentioned Ali ibn Abi Talib last time, that he was killed by Khawarij, and Uthman radiallahu anhu was killed by Khawarij. They were not formed as a group at the time, but this was their start. Again, one of the biggest traits of Khawarij is that they are disconnected from Sahaba. Khawarij are disconnected from Sahaba. They claim to be following Quran. They claim to be following Sunnah. But they broke that chain. They're not following. They didn't learn from Sahaba. None of the Sahaba. The Prophet ﷺ, when he did the farewell pilgrimage, the Hajjat al-Wada, 100,000 Sahaba was with him. Later on, those who couldn't make it at the year. None of them, 0, became a Khariji. No one. Those who came after and depended on themselves and their own interpretation of Quran became Khawarij. They killed Uthman radiallahu anhu. They killed Ali radiallahu anhu. They made takfir towards Sahaba. Why? They broke the chain. This religion is connected between us and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Those chains are still here. If you want to mention any of those hadith, you can track it. Narrator by narrator by narrator. Same as fiqh, same as all this knowledge of this religion is chained. This is the importance of following those chains. If you start on, depending on your own understanding, depending on your interpretation, you will get astray. And this is the living proof. After Uthman radiallahu anhu was killed by those people, things actually went off of hand till today. Anyways, so this hadith that we're mentioning is a great virtue for the people of Yemen. And since it was mentioned that those are for the people of Yemen or Yemenites, scholars started trying to understand what does this hadith mean. So some of them said that this is Mecca and Medina. Why? Said that this means that Yemen here, just to give you a perspective. Medina, Mecca, Yemen, like going north to south. So if you're in Medina and you're pointing towards Yemen, you're actually pointing towards Mecca. Okay, Mecca is in the middle. So they said that when the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that Iman is Yemani, that he was mentioning the south, like Yemeni or south, the same, it's like synonymous. This was the first interpretation. The second one is that Mecca and Medina are those intended by, like Yemen here means Mecca and Medina. And we said the Prophet ﷺ mentioned this in the Battle of Tabuk, while he was in Tabuk. Now again, you have Medina, you have Mecca, you have Yemen, and Tabuk on the north. So if he's at north and he's saying Yemen, then he's pointing south, then it's Medina and Mecca, right? Or the third interpretation is that Ansar, that this hadith addresses the Ansar. Why? Because Ansar, as a tribe, that Aus or Khazraj, are originally from Yemen. They moved from Yemen a long time before, but their bloodline returned to Yemen. What Imam Ibn Salah, rahmahullah ta'ala, and Imam al-Nawawi, rahmahullah ta'ala, chose that Yemen is Yemen. Yemen is Yemen, right? Especially that in some narrations, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that the people of Yemen has come to you. In some of the narrations, there is like an introduction to this sentence. That the people of Yemen has come to you. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he mentioned that, he was talking to Muhajirin from Mecca, or he was talking to the Ansar who was living in the Medina. And he made the Yemenis a third group, which are the people that came from Yemen. The Prophet ﷺ related Iman to them to indicate that those who came from Yemen to him, والسلام, they were actually full of Iman. They fulfilled the state of Iman. And they embraced it in a strong manner. And this was how the people of Yemen at his time, sallallahu and shortly after were. Like the best of Tabi'een. Who's the best of Tabi'een? Uwais al-Qarni from Yemen. The person that the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba, if you find him, ask him to make dua for you. And Umar started searching for him until he found him. And he asked him, told him, I heard that the Prophet ﷺ mentioning you, and he told us, if you find him, ask him to make dua for you. And this is Uwais al-Qarni from Yemen. Another one is Abu Muslim al-Khawlani. Also from Yemen, from the followers from Yemen, from the Tabi'een from Yemen. Anyways, this doesn't mean or doesn't contradict with the virtues of al-Muhajirin or the virtues of Ansar, which is, generally speaking, might be a higher rank. But this indicates that those people who came from Yemen had this high rank of Iman. Also, this addressed directly the people at his time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and shortly after. But not necessarily all times. But there can come times where the people of Yemen are not good. It happens, right? But generally, at his time, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and shortly after, they were from the best Muslims. Moving to the next chapter, the chapter of virtues and rewards. And this is the 10th hadith. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قل هو الله أحد تعدل ثلث القرآن رواه البخاري ومسلم. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, قل هو الله أحد, say he is Allah the One, is equivalent to 1/3 of the Quran. And this is reported by Bukhari and Muslim. And this hadith was reported on the authority of 20 of the companions. From them, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu, Abu Darda, Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, Ubay ibn Ka'b, Mu'adh ibn Jabal, Abu Mas'ud al-Badri, Ibn Mas'ud. And I mentioned those two Sahaba to highlight this. Abu Mas'ud al-Badri, Uqba ibn Amir al-Khadraji al-Ansari. He died on day 41 of Hijrah. And there is Abdullah ibn Mas'ud. He is from Hudayl. He's from the Muhajirin. He's not an Ansari. And he was one of the early companions. And he died on the year 32. So there is Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, the great companion. And there is Abu Mas'ud al-Badri from Al-Ansar. Let's mention Abu Darda radiallahu anhu this time. Abu Darda Uwaymir ibn Amir al-Ansari al-Khazraji. He was the last one of his family to embrace Islam. Like he was the last one. Like he all embraced Islam. It was him remaining. But when he embraced Islam, he perfected his Islam. He became a scholar, a jurist, a worshipper, and a wise or a sage person. He attended all the battles with the Prophet ﷺ after Uhud. And he became the judge of Damascus during the Caliphate of Osman. During the time of Osman radiallahu anhu, he became the judge of Damascus. He died on the year 32 and reported 179 hadiths. Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, one of the great Sahabas. We're going to mention more about it. He was the chief of the Quran recitation scholars in Damascus. Actually, some of the known narrations today actually end he's the top of the chain, like after the Prophet. And he recited Quran to the Prophet ﷺ, like he learned the Quran from the Prophet ﷺ directly. Not all the Sahaba did that, right? Like Quran was revelated, the Prophet ﷺ told the Sahaba and they taught each other. Abu Darda radiallahu anhu recited the Quran to the Prophet ﷺ. So this again, there's another virtue. And he memorized all the Quran during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. He was asked, some man asked him, so tell me how many tasbih do you do each day? Like saying subhanallah, how many? So Abu Darda radiallahu anhu told him 100,000 if I'm not wrong with my accounting. He does 100,000 tasbih every day, unless fingers miscount. And he said, Abu Darda radiallahu anhu, whoever mentions death a lot, his happiness will decrease and his envy will decrease. Like, why would you be happy with this dunya or whatever in dunya if you're remembering death, remembering that this is what's happening? It's inevitable. It doesn't matter when, it will happen. And also, why would you envy people for something that you know for sure that will not remain? A man asked him for advice, so he told him, remember Allah in the times of ease, and He shall remember you in times of hardness. And if you mention the dead, assume that you are one of them. And if your nafs get attracted, or soul get attracted to a worldly matter, then contemplate what happened at the end. Right? Know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the times of raha, and He shall know in the time of shiddah. And if you mention the dead people, don't say, okay, this one Rabbi arhamum, and then just continue. No, know that there is a day that will come, Allah a'lam, that will be in His same place. It will be Fulan al-marhum or Allah arham. Right? What do you do for this day? And if your nafs gets attracted to something from this worldly matters, just think about anything. A house, 50 years later, it's gone, right? A car, the high line of like 2023 or 2024, the best of the best. Give it 10 years, it's gone. A phone, right? An iPhone, a Samsung, whatever. Give it 2 years, that's outdated, right? A person, a beautiful woman, give her 10 years, 5 years, right? This beauty will fade out. This is some of his wisdom, radiallahu anhu. This hadith showed the great value and the big virtue of the surah, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. And this is surah al-Ikhlas, the sincerity. It included tawheed and the affirmation of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Included monotheism and the affirmation of Allah's oneness subhanahu wa ta'ala. Generally speaking, Quran has 3 topics. Allah's attributes, subhanahu wa ta'ala, and monotheism, this one. Then rulings and teachings, do and don'ts, and then stories about what happened, or the people who followed the orders, or people who went astray and what happened to them. And this surah Allah Ahad mentions the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it included two names for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that are not mentioned in any other surah. Al-Ahad and As-Samad. Al-Ahad, uniquely one, and As-Samad, the self-sufficient, the everlasting refuge, and the thing or the who is sought by all, everyone directs to him. Those two names includes all the complete attributes of them. All the complete attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala are included in those two names. Al-Ahad, one without anyone else who is similar. Right? So it means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is unique in His existence and not the same as any of the other creation. Even His existence is not like the existence of any creation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala existing is like self-existing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't need anything to make Him exist. All the creations were created, like by name they're creations. They depend on their own existence on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not like that. And As-Samad includes the attributes of completeness and superiority. As it means that the one who has complete sovereignty in the way that all creations are dependent on Him and direct Him for all their needs. And this is not acceptable or true except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who had the complete attributes, right? Those two names included and denoted Allah's attributes subhanahu wa ta'ala and existence in a way that any other surah or in like those names denotes and include the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not like there is no other name equivalent to them. Al-Ahad and As-Samad. So this surah included the knowledge of Tawheed and knowledge of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like if you mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah was Samad, lam yalid, like He was not born, He didn't give birth, and lam yulad, He was not born. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. There is nothing or no one similar to Him or equivalent to Him. So this is complete Tawheed for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ibn Taymiyyah rahmahullah ta'ala mentioned that by reading this surah, you get the reward. You get rewarded like reading quarter of or 1/3 of the Quran. Like if you're reading 10 juz, you get the same amount of reward by reading Qul Huwallahu Ahad. But reading the Quran is better than reading Qul Huwallahu Ahad 3 times. Right? And he mentioned, and he said that the knowledge that you gain from reading the whole Quran is not attained just by reading Qul Huwallahu Ahad 3 times, right? And he said, like, let's say, assume someone has $3,000 and a car worth $3,000 and food worth $3,000. And the other person has only the $3,000 or $9,000. He's still in need for the car and he needs for the food, right? So even if he has this third or the same as third that the other person has, that doesn't mean like duplicating this is not equivalent to what the other person has. And this is for this hadith. The next hadith is قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم, the 11th hadith. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم المؤذنون أطول الناس أعناقا يوم القيامة. رواه مسلم. When Muslim rahmahullah ta'ala reported that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, those who call for praise and mu'adhin will have the longest necks on the day of judgment. Necks. And this hadith is reported on the authority of 9 of the companions, as counted by Shaykh al-Kittani rahmahullah ta'ala. Okay, so this hadith was reported like for the mu'adhins, like the tallest necks on the day of judgment, was reported on the authority of 9 of the companions, as counted by Shaykh al-Kittani rahmahullah ta'ala. Those companions are Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, Anas ibn Malik, Bilal ibn Rabah, Zayd ibn al-Arqam, Abdullah ibn Zubayr, Uqba ibn Amir, Abu Hurairah, Abdullah ibn Umar, and the 9th was mentioned by one of the companions of the Prophet, was not mentioned with his name. It was not mentioned by his name. but you know that he's a companion. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu, ibn Abi Sufyan radiallahu anhu. Muawiyah and Abu Sufyan both are Sahaba. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, and the name of Abu Sufyan is Sakhr ibn Harb ibn Umayyah al-Qurashi al-Umawi. He is the founder of the Umayyad state, Umayyad kingdom, Umayyad Khilafah, however you call it. He was born in Mecca and embraced Islam on the day of Mecca, the day that Mecca was conquered. When the day the Prophet ﷺ entered Mecca, he embraced Islam on that day. He learned writing and learned mathematics. So the Prophet ﷺ made him one of his writers. He assigned some writing task for him. And Umar radiallahu anhu made him the governor of Jordan. Then Osman radiallahu anhu extended that to include all the Sham. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. So the Prophet ﷺ used him as a writer, like, as an assistant, basically as an assistant. And Umar radiallahu anhu assigned him the governance of Jordan, and Uthman extended it to be the whole Sham, which is today, by today's geography, four countries: Palestine, Jordan, Syria, and Lebanon. This is the whole Sham. On the 841, Al-Hasan radiallahu anhu relinquished or gave up being a Khalifa for Muawiyah. We mentioned this shortly last time. And Muawiyah radiallahu anhu remained a Khalifa for 19 years. And he died on the 60th after Hijrah at the age of 77. He died in Damascus and was buried there. And he reported 130 hadith. Muawiyah radiallahu anhu is the best king in Islam. King. Okay? Why? Because he's still a Sahabi. We mentioned that this dispute or this argument with him and Ali, the right was with Ali. Ali was the right party. But Muawiyah, still a Sahabi. He did what he did. Like, was a misunderstanding between them. He thought that he was doing right. But still, he is one of the Sahaba. Okay? The right side was Ali radiallahu anhu. Why? The Prophet told us, made it clear for us. He told about Ammar. He told جويح عمار تقتله الفئة الباغية. Right? He told that Ammar ibn Yasir would be killed by the aggressive or the wrong side or the wrong group. Okay? And he was killed by the army of Muawiyah radiallahu anhu. So we know that Muawiyah is not, that the right is with Ali radiallahu anhu. Still, Muawiyah radiallahu anhu was one of the Sahaba. He was the greatest king of Muslims. Okay. He was the greatest king in Islam. He was not, of course, he was not at the level of the Khulafa al-Rashidin, but he was still the best after them. Anyways, what will have the longest necks on the Day of Judgment mean? When you're looking for something, you just extend your neck to see what's happening. Okay? And when you extend it, you just elongate it. Now it's the longest one, right? So the first interpretation that they'll be looking for or expecting Allah's mercy the most. So be extending the necks to receive Allah's mercy. This is the first meaning. The second meaning is that when the sweat bridles people, like preached here for the people on the Day of Judgment, their necks will be higher, taller, or will become taller so that they're not affected by this.
Sweat?
Yeah, sweat on the Day of Judgment. Right? You know that on the Day of Judgment, the Prophet ﷺ told us that the sun will come near and then people start sweating depending on their doings or their deeds. And from them who just reach to his ankle, from the people who reach to his knees or to his waist, or from them some people who just get bridled. Okay. The other meaning that they are the chiefs and leaders. Since Arabs in general describe the leader by being long necked, where you say that this person has a long neck, meaning that he's a leader. Or that they have the most followers, again there's another meaning. Or that they have that the people with the most great deeds. Okay, anyway, this is the virtue for the Muathen. It was reported in some narration, أطول الناس أعناقا, or like بالكسر أعناق, not أعناق. And العنق is like a way of moving and walking quickly, which means that they will be the first people to hurry to Jannah. Anyway, this hadith is a great virtue for the Mu'adhin. And then an important question comes, or a question comes. What is better, being a Mu'adhin or being an Imam?
Both have their own virtues. Imam is better.
Yeah, okay, Imam is better. Why?
More responsibility, more action.
More responsibility, certainly it's more responsibility. Okay, anyway, this hadith supports scholars who say that being a Mu'adhin is better than being an Imam. Okay? And they said that the reason that the Prophet ﷺ didn't do adhan, they mentioned two reasons. If the Prophet ﷺ stands up and say, Hayya ala salah, no excuse. You have to come. Nothing. Okay? The Prophet, that's the message, the Prophet ﷺ had the right that if you're praying and he calls you, come, you have to get out your prayer and come. استجيبوا لله ولرسوله إذا دعاكم لما يحييكم.
Yeah, but if you hear the adhan, you have to come. There's no separate hadith. The hadith, لو كان تسمعوا الأذان فلا تدور.
This is another discussion, and this is another thing. And for your knowledge, the majority of scholars doesn't consider it wajib. Yeah, the congregation. Okay? Sunnah mu'akkada, yes. Nobody argue about that. But being a wajib, especially in masjid, no. Most of the scholars say no. A lot of hadith, like, again, when you deal with rulings, you don't take a single hadith. Don't single a hadith out and discuss it. This was one of the reasons. The other reason that they said that the Prophet ﷺ was not free forever. He had more responsibilities that he needed to attend to. He was actually leading the nation. He was leading the Muslims. So he had to assign this task to another person. And that's what Umar radiallahu anhu said. That he said, if it was not for being a Khalifa, I would do the adhan. Okay? The second opinion is that no, maybe being an Imam is better. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ was the Imam, not the Mu'adhin. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chooses for his Prophet what is best. Right? But now this hadith indicates that they are the longest necks on the day of judgment, which means that they are better. And then there is a third opinion, that they are the same or have the same virtue. Whether it's being an Imam or being an Mu'adhin is similar. And then there's the fourth opinion. The person who knows the rights of leading the prayer, of being an Imam, on how to be an Imam and their responsibility, and be fit for this responsibility, then Imamah is better for him. And if not, then Adhan is better. Can a person be the Mu'adhin and the Imam? Like can be a Mu'adhin and the Imam at the same time? Yes. Of course, a discussion on this. What Imam Nawawi rahmahullah showed that is even desirable, like even mustahab to be, if you can take both virtues, being a Mu'adhin and being an Imam, then do it.
So, موجودة في الحديث that someone was the Mu'adhin and the Imam في الجماعة?
No.
So
Usually there is a Mu'adhin, usually there is an Imam. But if for some reason a person does the Adhan and does the Imamah, it's okay. Even he's getting both virtues.
but how do we know if there's no precedence in the hadith?
What do you mean, how do you know?
How do we know it's not a bid'ah if there's no precedence in the hadith? If the Sahaba, if the Prophet never allowed the Sahaba to do it, right?
He don't know. He didn't tell them no. Don't do it. The Prophet ﷺ did do the. I'll tell you something. When they asked the Prophet ﷺ about on the way on traveling, he said, when it's Salah time, someone of you will make call for adhan, and the other of you shall lead the prayer, right? إذا حان وقت الصلاة فليؤذن أحدكما وليؤمكم كبيركم, right? He didn't tell them, but they cared not that, but the older doesn't do the adhan. He left it open, right? a little bit of thinking, you'll figure it out. Okay, so we're now at 40 minutes. Do you want to take the next hadith or leave it for next time? Take another hadith?
Let's do it.
Okay. Hadith number 12. قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بشر المشائين في الظلم إلى المساجد بالنور التام يوم القيامة. رواه أبو داود والترمذي. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, give good tidings to those who walk a lot or frequently to the mosques in the darkness of a complete light on the day of judgment. And this is reported by Tirmidhi and Abu Dawud. And this hadith is reported on the authority of 13 of the companions and 2 of the followers. 13 Sahaba and 2 Tabi'in. From the companions who reported this hadith, Uraidah radiallahu anhu, Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, Sahl ibn Sa'd radiallahu anhu. When I mentioned from the previous hadith, when I then mentioned radiallahu anhu, I was intending to mention radiallahu anhum at the end, but I might have forgot, but no, I meant to say radiallahu anhu for all of them. Sahl ibn Sa'd radiallahu anhu, Zayd ibn Haritha radiallahu anhu, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu, Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiallahu anhu. Abu Sa'id radiallahu anhu al-Khudri, Sa'd ibn Malik ibn Sinan al-Khazraji, from al-Khazraj, so it's from Ansar. He was not allowed to participate in the Battle of Uhud for being young. No, you're too young to join the army now. And his father, whatever, like Sa'd Malik ibn Sinan, was martyred on the Battle of Uhud. So Abu Sa'id radiallahu anhu attended 12 battles, the 12 battles to come, he attended all of them with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That meant 12 battles with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he became one of the scholars and jurists among the companions, and one of the virtuous, one virtuous and pious, and one virtuous and pious companion. He died in Medina on the year 64 after Hijrah, and reported 1,170 hadith. So he reported a lot. SubhanAllah, you see this with the young Sahaba. Sahaba were young at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. They lived long, so they report long. They teach people more and report more hadith, right? Like, no doubt that Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was the most knowledgeable. Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu was the most knowledgeable of the Sahaba. He was with the Prophet ﷺ for most of the time, and he was, his close companion that the Prophet ﷺ would discuss with him. So he had a lot of knowledge, right? And but since he just had this short tenure for 2 years and 3 months, and he was already the Khalifa, not a lot of hadiths were reported on his authority, right? And this something just mentioned this. I've seen a lot of people, or there are a lot of people who have a lot of knowledge, but they don't teach, they don't speak. So they just, they don't pass on this ilm, they don't pass this hadith. People will just forget about them. Not only people, now we have this hadith, the hadith, نَضَّرَ اللَّهُ امْرَأً سَمَعَ مَقَالَتِي فَوَعَاهَا فَبَلَّغَهَا كَمَا سَمِعَهَا. Like, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lighten the face of a person who hears what I said and delivers it the way he heard it. So this is a virtue. When the Prophet ﷺ said, بَلِّغْ عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً, like, deliver on my authority, even if one ayah, right? And on the other hand, I've seen ulama or mashayikh who are not as knowledgeable, but they sat down and they, teach and, made people read and they hear the books and, pass this change of narration. After a while, those are the ulama who will be remembered and will make dua for them, right? Right, subhanAllah, like when you see one of the isnads, right? You see go on, between us and like anyone, like Imam Ibn Hajar rahmatullah is nearly in every isnad that you can imagine. For all the books, you'll find Ibn Hajar in this chain, right? Rahmatullah ta'ala. Then people, like this was passed on to the ulama of India or the Indian continent. They gave a lot of care and attention for the narrations of hadith. So it doesn't matter. You find that even if you're like you have this chain of narration from wherever, you're going to go to India and back. Like this period of time, you're going to go to India and back with this chain of narration. Anyways, so if you have knowledge, pass it, but first know what you're passing or what you're delivering. Don't make things up. Don't depend on your own understanding. Learn and read and ask ulama and then teach if you're able. Okay, al-masha'un or al-masha'in. Masha'in, in Arabic there are some ways of mentioning the exaggeration. We call it صيغة المبالغة. Like the person who does think a lot. Masha, like the person who yamshi is walking, he's mashi or yamshi. But those are masha'un, they walk a lot. Okay? So those who walk a lot to the mosques when it's dark, meaning to say that they walk to the mosque when Fajr and Isha, right? Will get rewarded by this complete light on the day of judgment. Complete light in their faces. Complete light when surrounding them. Complete light when they're crossing the sirat, right? Why? Jaza'an wifaq. Al-jaza'u min jinsi al-amal. Like, you get rewarded, or the reward suits what you did. They went, it's not comfortable walking in the darkness. It might be cold, it might be dark, it might be wet. Or it's dark, it might be cold and wet too. You might, in some, depending on where you live in this world, some dogs might go, chasing you. Right? And they actually endured that, and they did that for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they get rewarded with this nur and this light on the day of judgment.
But riding your animal or driving doesn't count, right? In this hadith?
SubhanAllah, do not restrict Allah's grace. Right? Driving in the dark is not easy, right?
It's not walking.
Again, but it's not easy. SubhanAllah, I was just now, before I come here, I was at SFU. It was a really unpleasant ride. It's, and it's fog, and it's dark, and I cannot see. Again, SubhanAllah, right? So if this is the case in the morning or in the Fajr and Isha, even if it's just raining and just showering, no, there is some, struggle in it or some hardness in it. Anyways, do not restrict Allah's grace. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward you. Do not restrict it. Yes, of course, you will not be like someone who would walk 500 meters in the darkness and rain and mud to reach the masjid. You will not be the same. But do not restrict Allah's reward. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His reward. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for His mercy. Right? Okay, next time inshallah we're going to start the hadith number 13 for the siwak. And subhanAllah, going on now we're mentioning virtues of these. Then will be some of we'll touch on fiqh a little bit on maybe after 2 or 3 hadith. Maybe we'll start one of those next time or the time after. I will continue. Now, as you see, like this is our 4th class and this hadith number 13. It's not like the 14th hadith. جزاكم الله خيرا. Any questions؟ جزاكم الله خيرا وصلى الله وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا والحمد لله رب العالمين.